Welcome everyone to our next session with Kristin Williams. Done enough, dwelling in the threshold. This, of course, is part of our fantastic 36-hour series of the MSR Research Colloquium, the mystical and research dwelling at the threshold of knowing. And as you know, we're gathering here as a global community of scholars and practitioners to explore how the mystical experience may be embodied, researched, taught, and brought into leadership, management, and organizational life. And who better to lead us in this than our distinguished guest today, Kristin Williams. Kristin is an associate professor in management at Acadia University in Canada. She's also the managing director at Prudentia Institute, home to the award-winning Student Research Lab. She's an interdisciplinary scholar and identifies as a polemical feminist engaged in activist writing and narrative methods. Her work has been published in a wide range of international journals, edited books, and monographs, and she currently serves as the in editorial roles for Journal of Canadian Studies, Qualitative Research in Organizations and Management, and the Journal of Management History. And throughout her career, she has received several academic awards, amongst them the Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee Medal. And if you were here in the last session on how to publish, Kristin, you should have joined us because I just counted her publications, and it's probably more than what I found. 17 for 2025. So I think we all can learn from you.
Thank you.
What about the topic? So done enough, dwelling in the threshold. What's the session about? About the experience of doneness as a liminal and affective threshold rather than a fixed endpoint. While completion in organizational and academic life is often treated as a technical or objective state, her work reframes doneness as a relational and quasi-sacred movement marked by ambiguity, emotional intensity, and transformation. And she draws on feminist, interpretive, and practice-based perspectives. So our session will engage in writing and creative work as sites where knowing is felt, negotiated, and released. So our session will combine brief scholarly framing with a reflective writing exercise and a facilitated dialogue. So we just talked about it will be about 20 minutes, and then will be the reflection. That's going to be the core part. So you will encounter your own experiences of done enough, attending to the tensions between closure and continuation, accomplishment and loss, certainty and ambiguity. In doing so, the session creates space to dwell at the threshold of knowing, where completion is not final but generative, opening new questions, relationships, and possibilities for meaning making. And before I hand over to Kristin, let me introduce our tech host, Daniel Nitschka. If you experience any technical issues throughout the session, just put something in the chat or email us and we will help you to sort it out. Please also note that this session is being recorded, so people who are not with us now can experience it later. So with this, it's a great joy, Kristin, to welcome you, and the stage is yours. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much, Konstantin. This is a lovely introduction. I'm quite overwhelmed. As I was saying just to the colleagues of the MSR community before those of you joined us, this is a project that's been with me for some time, and I've been afraid to bring it out into the world. So I appreciate the space that the MSR community is offering today, and I appreciate that all of you are here to share it with me. Before I get started, I just wanted to acknowledge that, the university, Acadia University and Prudential Institute are situated in Mi'kma'ki, and that's the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. So this land holds the histories and the knowledge systems and the cultures of more than 50 distinct African Nova Scotian communities as well. And I'm a settler living and working and raising a family here. And I've come to understand that reconciliation and accountability and learning are never truly finished projects. They require an ongoing willingness to listen and to reflect and to remain open to being changed. And in many ways, this realization sits at the heart of the ideas I will be discussing today about doneness, this tension between completion and continual becoming. I also want to just acknowledge that my roles, this of being both a researcher and an editor, have kind of immersed me in the rhythms of academic life, including deadlines, revisions, and the pressure of declaring work done and to move on. At the same time, my engagement with youth participatory action research in particular and developmental spaces has sensitized me to the emotional and relational dimensions of endings and transitions and new beginnings. And some of those are beautiful and some of them are bittersweet. So let me share my screen. So I became drawn to this notion of done enough as a way to name the tensions I experience between rigor and release, completion and continuation in both my scholarly and lived practice. So this session will explore the experiences of doneness as a liminal and affective threshold rather than a fixed endpoint. So while completion in organizational studies, as Konstantin said, is often treated as this kind of technical, objective state, I'm hoping to reframe our feelings about doneness as relational and as a potential quasi-sacred moment that's typically marked by feelings of ambiguity and sometimes emotional intensity and sometimes transformation. So my experience with writing and creative work is that these are states where knowing is often felt and negotiated and released. And that's really what's brought me to this talk this morning. So I'm going to begin our session with a short talk about my developing ideas in this area. This will take about 20 minutes, and then I'm going to invite you to participate in an exercise with me. So sit back, be comfortable, and if after the talk you want to share through the exercise, I'm hoping that we can conclude with a bit of a conversation. So in organizational life, doneness is typically treated as a very objective endpoint, a task finished, a manuscript submitted, a project delivered, a product launched. Completion appears technical, measurable, administratively verifiable. It is documented in project management software, recorded in meeting minutes. It's stamped by approval processes or confirmed by email receipt. To be done seems self-evident. Yet lived experience suggests otherwise. Doneness rarely arrives as a simple fact. Instead, it is often felt as ambiguous, relief mingled with loss, pride entangled with exposure, satisfaction tempered by doubt. Completion may feel anticlimactic, melancholic, or even disorienting. Something shifts when we declare an endeavor finished. A relationship between maker and work is altered. A stretch of time collapses into a moment of release. I argue that doneness is neither a stable endpoint nor a purely technical achievement. Rather, it's liminal. It's a moment, a threshold between becoming and release. And I draw on anthropological and organizational theories of ritual and liminality to make sense of this, to conceptualize doneness as a transitional state, marked not by finality, but by transformation. To declare something done is not to seal it, it is to move it across a boundary. Extending this argument, I ask three central questions. How do we know something is done? What signals authorize completion? Why do these signals sometimes delay the very closure they are meant to produce? By addressing these questions, I propose that doneness is an organizational generative concept, the negotiated mechanism through which becoming is transformed into legitimacy while remaining structurally unstable. These ideas contribute to organizational theory by conceptualizing doneness as a liminal mechanism through which ongoing processes become stabilized into legitimate output. Rather than treating completion as a technical endpoint, I theorize it as a negotiated threshold produced through the privileging of boundary, aesthetic, embodied, institutional signals. In doing so, I reposition completion as politically authorized, effectively charged, and temporally unstable. I think we need to move doneness beyond an interpersonal or administrative determination to a multi-level process that is simultaneously self-calibrated, politically authorized, and interpersonally negotiated. Completion emerges not only through formal criteria or felt coherence, but through dialectic engagement in which collaborators reconcile distinct standards of sufficiency. Doneness is then effectively charged and influenced by power relations. It's not the end of becoming, it's rather provisional and collectively stabilized. In both academic and artistic practice, doneness appears repeatedly and dissolves repeatedly. A scholarly article feels done at submission, undone at revision, done again at acceptance, and undone once more as it enters critique and citation. A painting may feel complete when the artist experiences tacit coherence between gesture and form, yet it continues to accumulate meaning beyond the maker's intention. Doneness resembles ritual, like rites of passage. It marks separation and transition rather than termination. The long, ambiguous stretch of process gives way to a punctuated declaration. It is finished. Something is set apart from its generative context and repositioned for circulation. The work leaves the intimate sphere of becoming and enters the public sphere of interpretation. From this perspective, doneness is sacred not because it is perfect, but because it is set apart. The sacred, as scholars suggest, is that which is distinguished from the ordinary flow of time. Moments of doneness reorganize temporally. The extended labor of drafting, refining, revising collapses into a singular gesture, a submission, a delivery, a release. The process becomes artifact. Yet this separation is never absolute. Like ritual thresholds, moment of completions produce ambiguity. Relief coexists with melancholy. Accomplishment coexists with exposure. Something has crystallized, yet it remains open. The work now exists beyond the maker's control, meaning proliferates relationally. Doneness then is not closure, but transition. It is a suspension between attachment and release. If doneness is liminal, it is nonetheless signaled. Completion does not emerge spontaneously, it is authorized through cues that indicate sufficiency. These signals operate at multiple levels and can be grouped into two broad categories: boundary conditions and aesthetic conditions. Boundary conditions include deadlines, formal requirements, word limits, my favorite, grading rubrics, budgets, and institutional approvals. These are explicit, externally defined markers of completion. A thesis is done when the committee approves it. A project is done when deliverables are submitted. A product is done when it's shipped. Boundary conditions embolden completion by narrowing possibility. They compress infinite becoming into finite action. A deadline says, enough. A word limit forces reduction. A budget cap imposes decision. Without boundaries, work risks endless expansion. Yet boundary conditions can also delay doneness. When technical criteria are internalized as moral standards, when adequacy becomes conflated with worth, the boundary becomes a site of anxiety. Instead of authorizing release, it intensifies fear of insufficiency. The structure designed to facilitate completion may actually produce hesitation. Thus, boundary conditions simultaneously enable and destabilize doneness. They produce legitimacy while heightening exposure. Beyond technical sufficiency lies aesthetic fruition, a felt sense of coherence, resonance, or rightness. A poem may satisfy formal constraints yet feel unfinished. Conversely, a technically imperfect painting may feel whole. Aesthetic signals are embodied and tacit. They arise through practice and intuition and attunement. The work settles. It ceases to demand intervention. Unlike deadlines, aesthetic conditions have no external clock. They depend on internal calibration, yet this very openness can defer completion indefinitely. The pursuit of rightness can become perpetual revision. The aesthetic signal deepens the meaning of doneness while simultaneously destabilizing its arrival. Doneness emerges then at the intersection of boundary and aesthetic signals. It is the moment when sufficiency overtakes perfection, or when time overtakes refinement. The interplay of boundary and aesthetic conditions reveals what I believe to be a central paradox. The signals that authorize doneness can also defer it. Deadlines embolden action, but provoke fear. Technical requirements confer legitimacy, but heighten exposure. Aesthetic attunement offers meaningful closure, but resists finality. Doneness is not the satisfaction of a signal condition, but the privileging of one signal over another. It is a negotiated threshold. Consider a classroom exercise. Students are asked to compose a haiku poem using the 5-7-5 syllabic formula about nature within 15 minutes. 3 signals: structure, completion, format, content, and time. When is the poem done? When the clock ends? When the syllables align? When the poem feels alive? The exercise reveals that doneness is layered. Technical compliance does not guarantee aesthetic coherence. Temporal closure may override felt resonance. The declaration of completion depends on which signals are privileged and by whom. This privileging is neither neutral nor stable. Completion is also not solely cognitive. It's embodied. An exhale after sending an email, the stillness after a final brushstroke, the closing of a laptop at midnight, maybe earlier for some. The body registers doneness through release, fatigue, or quiet. Sometimes the body knows before the mind. The shoulders drop, the breath steadies, the urge to intervene subsides. Embodied signals complicate technical definitions. A project may be formally complete, yet the body remains tense. Alternatively, a work may feel somatically finished, even when technically imperfect. Recognizing embodiment situates doneness within lived experience rather than abstract evaluation. It affirms completion is not merely a decision, but a felt transition. To declare something done is also to withdraw care. It is to relinquish further shaping and accept imperfection. In this sense, doneness carries a moral dimension. Enough is never neutral. To say this is sufficient requires courage. It acknowledges limits of time, energy, knowledge. It accepts that perfection is unattainable. It tolerates exposure. Being in process can sustain identity. It allows continual refinement. Being done demands transition. It closes one chapter while opening another. Organizations rely on moments of completion to structure continuity. Projects launched, policies implemented, papers published. These punctuate organizational time. Yet the ambiguity of these thresholds is often obscured by administrative neatness. Doneness is administratively clear, but experientially complex. Doneness is not merely experienced, it's also authorized. The power to declare something complete is unevenly distributed. Editors get to decide when a manuscript is accepted. Committees decide when a dissertation is sufficient. Peers and collective agreements decide when to offer tenure and promotion. Managers declare projects closed. Funders approve deliverables. Completion is thus political. Internal aesthetic signals may conflict with external boundary conditions. A scholar may feel a manuscript is unfinished even as it is accepted. An artist may feel a piece is complete even as critics demand revision. These tensions expose doneness as a site where agency, legitimacy, and institutional authority intersect. Who gets to say this is enough? In organizations, premature closure or endings may serve efficiency, while perpetual incompletion may sustain control. The politics of doneness shape not only outputs but identities. To be not yet done can imply inadequacy. To be done can signal competence, closure, or even disposability. Doneness transforms becoming into legitimacy. It converts a process into a recognized output. But this transition is always negotiated. If doneness is both liminal and authorized, it is also dialectic. Much of my preceding analysis treats doneness as an individual or institutionally negotiated idea between boundary, aesthetic, embodied, and political signals. Yet in many organizational contexts, work is not solitary, it's collaborative. Manuscripts are co-authored, projects are co-designed, strategies are co-developed. In these spaces, doneness is not merely felt or declared, it is dialogically calibrated. When two or more actors share responsibility for a project, each brings distinct criteria of sufficiency. One partner may privilege technical compliance and deadlines. Another may prioritize conceptual coherence or aesthetic resonance. One may feel the embodied release of readiness. The other may experience lingering tensions. These signals do not collapse into one another, they coexist. Doneness in collaboration, therefore, emerges through dialect, a back and forth process in which separate criteria are articulated, defended, revised, and reconciled. Completion becomes neither purely internal nor external, but relationally negotiated. This negotiation is not trivial. It involves risk. To say, I think this is done, is to expose one's standards to scrutiny. It is to reveal one's tolerance for imperfection. It is to disclose how one evaluates sufficiency. In collaborative settings, the declaration of doneness becomes a vulnerable act. It may be received as impatient, as complacency, or as courage. Conversely, resistance to closure may be interpreted as rigor, perfectionism, or control. Thus, collaborative doneness services differences in epistemology, in axiology. What counts as enough? Enough for whom? Enough according to what values? We can conceptualize collaborative doneness as a dialogic model structured around three movements: articulation of criteria, where partners name, implicitly or explicitly, the signals they privilege. mutual recognition, where each party encounters the other's criteria as legitimate but potentially conflicting, and threshold negotiation, where provisional agreement is reached about which signals will govern closure at this moment in time. The threshold is therefore co-produced. Importantly, this agreement does not eliminate difference. Rather, it stabilizes it temporarily. One signal is privileged over another, but only for now. The work is declared done under negotiated conditions. This relational tuning mirrors my broader arguments. Doneness is not the satisfaction of all signals, but the privileging of some signals over others. In collaborative contexts, this privileging must be mutually endorsed or at least mutually tolerated. Dialectic doneness introduces an additional layer to the paradox of delay, where individual aesthetic attunement may defer closure internally. Collaborative misalignment can defer closure interpersonally. If partners can't align their criteria, the project remains suspended in negotiation. The work circulates between drafts and revisions and refinements, not because technical standards are unmet, but because thresholds are misaligned. This tension is not merely obstructive, it also can be quite generative. This friction between differing standards may actually elevate the work. A partner who resists premature closure may deepen conceptual rigor. A partner who urges release may protect momentum and prevent perfectionist paralysis. The dialectic can thus produce higher order sufficiency, a version of doneness that neither party would have reached alone. In this sense, collaborative doneness exemplifies what organizational scholars describe as productive tension. The work becomes done not when conflict disappears, but when partners agree that continued negotiation no longer meaningfully transforms the artifact. As with institutional authorization, relational tuning is also shaped by power. Hierarchy, expertise, seniority, reputation, and personality all influence whose criteria will prevail. In co-authored academic work, for example, a senior scholar's tolerance for imperfection may override a junior collaborator's desire for further refinement, or vice versa. In organizational projects, managerial authority may determine closure even if team members feel unresolved. Thus, even within the dialogic negotiation, the declaration of doneness may be asymmetrical. It may be consented to rather than fully shared. And this complicates the notion of collaborative agreement. Doneness may appear jointly declared while being unevenly experienced. One partner may feel release, another may feel concession. Recognizing this asymmetry reinforces the political dimension of doneness. Even within small teams, completion is structured by authority and influence. The dialectic is not neutral. Once collaboratively declared doneness also reorganizes relational identity. The project shifts from ours in process to ours in circulation. The shared labor that once structured ongoing interaction dissolves. What remains is artifact and attribution. In this transition, collaborators must renegotiate the relationship to the work and to one another. If doneness is sacred as separation, collaborative doneness intensifies that sacredness. It marks not only the release of the artifact, but the transformation of the relational state. The intimacy of joint becoming gives way to the public life of shared output. This relational release is rarely acknowledged, yet many scholars and practitioners recognize it's kind of a quiet aftershock, a subtle loss once the project is finished, the energy that sustained collaboration dissipating. Doneness reconfigures not only the work, but the bond that it produces. Not all delay is accidental. In some contexts, incompletion is strategically maintained. Remaining in process can preserve relevance, sustain funding, or defer accountability. Organizations frequently operate in states of managed incompletion through pilot programs and beta releases, living documents, and ongoing restructuring. Strategic undoneness can function as protection. Endings demand new beginnings. Completion may close avenues of attention or authority. To remain in process is to preserve potential. Individuals too may resist doneness. Being almost finished sustains anticipation. Being done invites evaluation. Completion exposes the work and, by extension, the maker to judgment. Doneness therefore carries risks. It involves separation from the generative intimacy of process. Strategic undoneness reveals that incompletion can be a form of control, resistance, and identity preservation. Doneness does not simply end time, it reorganizes it. The declaration of completion compresses extended layer into a singular moment. It retrospectively frames prior effort as purposeful becoming. What once felt chaotic now appears linear. The artifact seems inevitable. Yet doneness is provisional. What is declared finished may later be reopened, revised, reinterpreted. Completion folds time rather than sealing it. It transforms process into product while leaving meaning unstable. In this sense, doneness is a narrative hinge. It marks a shift from private labor to public circulation. The work acquires a temporal afterlife, citation, critique, adaptation, reinterpretation, all extending the life of what was once declared done. Doneness interrupts becoming, but does not extinguish it.
Kristin, sorry to interrupt. You may have to call your presentation done because we have only 12 minutes left.
Do I? I thought I had 45.
You said you want to do an exercise?
Yes, I have time. Don't worry. I have time. I'm nearly done. So doneness is existential. At its deepest register, doneness is existential. It confronts us with a finiteness. To declare something complete is to acknowledge limits of time, of capacity, of control, and to accept further becoming will not rescue it from imperfection. In this sense, doneness is not discovered but chosen. It resembles what existential philosophers describe as a decisive act, a commitment made in the absence of certainty. We do not know that the work is complete in the ultimate sense. We assume responsibility for calling it so. Our commitments to excellence, to recognition, to self-protection, to care shape the threshold we are willing to cross. Perfectionism may defer doneness indefinitely, sustaining the fantasy of eventual mastery. Courage, by contrast, accepts contingency and it releases the work into a world that will reinterpret it beyond our control. Doneness that exposes the freedom and burden of authorship. It is an act of situated judgment through which we confront our own limits and consent to them. Completion is neither fixed nor ontologically real. It is an existential wager that this here is now enough. To move beyond reflection, doneness can be articulated as an organizational mechanism, the negotiated process through which becoming is stabilized as a legitimate outcome. The mechanism operates through signal privileging, through authorization, through temporal framing, through relational release. Yet the mechanism is unstable. Completion remains open to interpretation. Legitimacy can be withdrawn and artifacts can be revised. Doneness then embodies a paradox. It transforms fluid process into recognizable outputs while remaining vulnerable to reopening. To be done enough is not to achieve perfection, but to accept sufficiency. It is to recognize that closure is provisional and that meaning continues beyond the declaration of completion. So doneness is neither purely objective nor purely subjective. It is codified, yet embodied, authorized, yet felt, temporal yet recursive. It marks a pause in becoming, not a cessation. By conceptualizing doneness as liminal, sacred, political, embodied, and temporally unstable, we open space for rethinking how organizations understand creativity, productivity, and endings. Completion is not merely a final stage of work, it is a charged threshold that reorganizes relationships between maker, artifact, institution, and audience. Doneness matters because it is a moment when becoming is transformed into legitimacy, when effort crystallizes into recognition. Yet this crystallization is fragile. It depends on signals, authority, and courage. To be done enough is to step across a boundary of knowing that meaning will continue to unfold. So that's the end of my remarks. And now I kind of want to talk to the group about your own feelings of doneness. So I want you to take a few minutes, maybe not 5, maybe 3 minutes, and write about a moment that something felt done enough. This could be a project, a relationship, a role, a paper, a degree, a season of life, a personal commitment. Consider what signaled that it was done. Who or what authorized its completion? What emotions were present? Relief, pride, grief? What remained unresolved or unfinished? And do you still believe it was done enough? So let's take 3 minutes to do that. Starting now.
Kristin, you have such an encapsulating voice. I think that a lot of us just, I got completely immersed in your presentation. But
Absolutely.
it means we only have, we literally only have a few minutes left. So I wonder if, could we use this, the points that you have here on the slide as a base
As a
for
talking
discussion?
point?
As a
Yeah,
talking point?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Good. Then unfortunately, I suggest to do that. So let's have comments from the people on this one. I said it's really fantastic because it's so relevant to all of us, and time is fascinating. And I was wondering, you talked about it in relation to our work, but maybe you can just say briefly, how about other relations, and is your work either informed or does it inform the literature on closure, like a job loss, for example, or a breakup, or maybe the loss of a loved one?
For death.
Yeah.
And I think your language hinted on that very much.
It
Yes,
absolutely
it
does.
did. It did. It
You
did.
know, as a mother, soon to be an empty nester, absolutely. Feeling that at the moment. I've got my youngest is graduating from high school, so he'll be up and out next year, and then it's just the two of us again. I don't know how I feel about that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I know what my next readings will be. So this was absolutely wonderful. Kristin,
Wonderful.
thank you so much for sharing. It's far too little time. We all need to learn about doneness.
Well, thank you for
Um,
making me feel not exposed in sharing this with you because I was nervous. And so thank you for that. Appreciate it.
And I don't know if you shared your final slide.
I didn't. My final slide was, what are you carrying that might already be done enough, even if it does not yet feel finished?
And with this, I wish you all a fantastic next session. Thank you for participating here, being with us. Again, special thanks to our speaker. A brief announcement. The next session will be the role of mystical experiences, forgiveness and gratefulness in management research by our research colloquium organizer Geto Momo, Anil Maheshwari, Dilchet Kaur Sumya Dutta, who is also tech host here today, Anita Mendirata. Then we have a next session on shifted reality to stewardship, ontological agility, perception, and action Gaeton Momo, Ella Malik, and Magnus von Haren. And then we have our plenary session, Science from the Inside Out with Marilyn Schlitz. So stay for that, definitely with co-hosts Judy Neal, Jerry Bieberman, and Tian Yuan Yu. And your very special next host will be Stacy Gunter, who I ghosted in my introduction, but there she is, and she will lead you through the next session. Again, thank you, everybody, and have
Thank
a
you,
great
Kristin. Thank you,
research
Kristin.
colloquium.
Thank you. Thank you, Kristin.
And it is recorded. You can all listen to it again. I'll listen to it when I go to bed.
Yes, same here. Same here.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.